everyone. Thank you for joining us in this episode of Angela Speaks of Eve Speaks. Today we are carrying on with our ongoing series of Clarity in Crisis, where we are discussing how to build your confidence. Confidence is such an important part of our journey if we are going to thrive. And so as we continue to navigate this period of unprecedented crises, we are going to discuss how to build our confidence tonight. And with me, we have our esteemed guest, as usual, Dr. Gloria Brown, whose 20 years as a psychotherapist is positioned to help us to navigate this process of how to build our confidence. Of course, this conversation cannot be exhausted in one 30-minute session, but certainly we can start tonight to have a conversation. So I'm excited. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for joining us. I'm very glad to have you. And so let us start. Let us begin. For our guests who are joining us, once again, this is Angie Speaks with Eve Speaks. We are dogged, determined, and deliberate about becoming the next best version of ourselves. And so building our confidence is certainly along that line of becoming and keep on becoming the next best version of ourselves. So, Dr. Brown, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. I can't see you as much, but I'm going to try to see if I can do something here to make sure that we are visible to everyone. So how are you?
I'm great.
You're great. You look confident. So tell me, Dr. Brown, in this process of, what is confidence, as a matter of fact? Let's start at the very beginning. What is confidence? What does that mean?
Well, confidence is how you feel about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's
how you feel about yourself? That's it?
Whether you believe in your abilities, whether you think you are able to accomplish whatever task is before you. Mm-hmm. It's the yes, I can.
It's the attitude of yes, I can. I love that. Yes, I can. For the longest time, I didn't believe I could do much. I really didn't believe I could do anything because I always felt like everything I started or tried to do, I would fumble and I would get this great anxiety about being able to complete anything or to achieve anything. So I definitely have been on my own journey to build my confidence. But a couple of days ago, actually yesterday to be exact, I started reading a book because I believe that confidence starts with the spiritual matters. And so I started reading this book by Priscilla Schuyler, and the title of the book is Fervent. And it talks about a specific strategy of how to build your confidence through prayer. And for me, that's where it really begins. And I continue to build on my commitment to prayer because I find that when my relationship with God is growing and deliberate, my confidence grows as well. It's almost like a one-to-one relationship. So while I believe that confidence is feeling good about myself and believing in my ability and thinking that I can do something, I realize that in order to get that foundation, I have to start with me understanding and having an awareness and really grasping how God sees me, and my confidence grows from His view of me, because then I can really I can thrive in that knowledge of knowing that my Creator thinks that I can. And so I believe prayer is really where it should begin for most people. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think for a Christian, that's true.
For the Christian, that's true. Okay, what interferes with having confidence, would you say?
Well, the main thing I think that interferes with it is our early experiences. Mm-hmm. A couple of sessions back, I talked about developmental needs. You know, how parents have a responsibility, a job to help their children to be able to develop in a way in which they can function in society. And part of that responsibility has to do with helping the child feel that they're worthwhile, that you believe in them. That, I think, unless a parent is really dysfunctional, most parents do feel good about their children and want to help their children. Unfortunately, there are a lot of realities that enter in that interferes with a parent's ability to really spend time with their children. These days, it requires, if there's two parents, in many cases they're not, but if there are two parents, it requires both parents working. And the more things they want, the harder they work. And the harder they work is the less time they have for each other and their children. And children can interpret that as, well, why is everything else so important? Why is want so important? Why is it that everybody else and whatever else is going on is more important than me? And so it doesn't have to be a horrible experience. Of course, horrible experiences reinforces that thing more. But even a simple thing says, I'm not good enough. And those thoughts can take you, those thoughts stay with you up into adulthood unless some effort is made to address it.
So the young mind interprets it as, I'm not worth the investment of time in me. And so that starts the process of devaluing our self-esteem and therefore affecting our confidence. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, in fact, I think it probably, adults think that way too. If you don't have time for your husband, he's going to think, she doesn't value me. She values everything else, whatever else she's doing, more than she values me. So the problem with the little children is that they can't take all the, their brains are small. They can't process everything. Hopefully an adult can do a little more processing, but it's still, no matter how you put it, if you value someone, you spend time with them. And when you don't do that, you are devaluing them. And that leaves them with feelings. And for little children, they're left with the feeling that I'm not good enough. And then that sets in. And as we grow older, we sort of just kind of gravitate to people who don't value us because we don't know what being valued feels like.
Right. You know, this hits a nerve because, as you know, with this COVID-19 crisis, I've always worked from home. Both my husband and I, we work from home. But now our children are at home. And I find myself saying quite often, no, I can't talk to you right now. No, not right now. Even today, I was telling my daughter, because she constantly is knocking on my door, coming into my office while, you know, I'm at work hours. Typically, she's at school. Right now, because of what's happening in our society, she's home. And I constantly find myself saying, Rachel, not right now, not right now, not right now. And just listening to you right now made me think, am I setting the tone for her to lose her confidence later on in life, even though what I'm doing is legitimate. I'm supposed to be at work from 9 to 5, but she's home now too, and so is my son, and they have this constant requirement for attention. And so it becomes a challenge during this period of the pandemic and the schools in disarray. And I think they're either planning to go on strike or there's some delay in opening the schools right now. So just you even saying this, how the past experiences can affect us as adults, is making me think twice right now about how I deal with them being home. It's a very sensitive area.
we're all going through an adjustment. The adults are, the children are. You know, years back, a mother's job was to be there and to be for her children, to watch them, that was the first teacher. We have gone to a place now where not only is the child not valued, but the whole family is not valued. Work, business takes priority over family. And that's a problem. It doesn't show up necessarily right away, although it could, you know, because if the children just have had enough of you, they will persist unless they give up in trying to get your love, your attention, your affection.
Well, that's definitely something for me to ponder this week, about how to balance the current crises with my children at home and me having a responsibility to work and all of that. Because I do recognize that it can create some limiting beliefs later on, or the feeling of I'm not good enough. My mom never has time for me because she's always so busy at the computer. But what can I do about it? I think that having this conversation is probably a good start for me, because I've never had this situation before. What else would you suggest that people can do about this conflict that we're facing right now with with children being home and battling for attention and not wanting to interfere with their development in terms of their confidence? What else could we do? You yourself have not even been in this situation.
What we can do is reevaluate our values. You know, what do we consider?
We can do what?
Reevaluate our values. What's important to us?
Well, the thing is that it's important to us, but we also have to work. You see the struggle? So it's not that I don't value my daughter. I certainly do. And I spend time with her when in the evening generally. But her being home during the day creates a whole nother set of challenges. But I understand that it probably wouldn't hurt to reevaluate my values. Go ahead.
Let's put it like this. I believe it's in France and a couple of other places. You see, the problem is beyond the family, although the family is quite affected by it. We live in a society that doesn't put a high priority on families. It also doesn't have a high priority on motherhood. And France understand that when a young girl gets pregnant, you know, there's no, everybody's working there. There's no welfare and all this kind of stuff, okay? So when a young woman gets pregnant, with or without a husband, the business makes room for her to go and raise her child. She gets paid and she gets time off for 5 years.
5 years?
That's what valuing a child looks like. We can't see that here because it's not a part of our system. And why do they do that? They realize that the child is eventually going to grow up and maybe a leader, and they want to put the child to do the best possible job that they can. And so therefore, they give the mother the chance to stay home and raise her child with pay. Maybe 3/4, but with pay for 5 years. That's not happening here in America.
America's close. 5 years of staying home with pay. That sounds like a fairy tale. Wow, that's amazing. Well, that definitely demonstrates value.
It's a different culture.
Different culture. Wow, that's 5 years. Wow, I didn't know that. I just learned something. So how does someone, we don't live in France, we have to deal with the American system, the American culture, the capitalistic society, the fact that we have to work and produce and take care of our children and all that goes along with living in America. How does one overcome the lack of confidence that is a outgrowth or you know, like a result of our go, 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 go society? How does one even try to overcome that?
Well, the beginning is that you have to choose. You have to choose to believe in yourself. That, you know, and by that, it means you have to take charge. You have to say, okay, you know what? These things happened in the past to cause me to feel the way I'm feeling. And it's not an easy thing to do. And that's why counseling and coaching and that sort of a thing exists, okay? But ultimately, what has to happen is you have to look back and see, okay, a lot of things didn't go right in my past. I had responsibility for those things. I couldn't leave. But now I'm not a child, I'm an adult. And as an adult, I have to take charge of my life. I have to stop blaming everybody, my mommy, my daddy, and everybody else. I have to stop blaming all those people and now look at myself. You know, we talk a lot about self-awareness. Who are you? What do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about your circumstances? What's important to you? You know, I, like everybody else, want to have this nice big house and, you know, the best of everything. However, it comes at a price. Unless you are already wealthy, you pay a price for having all those things. And so it's important for us to decide, do we want to pay that price?
Wow.
Do we need all those things that our society, who doesn't value us as a family, say we have to have in order to be okay? You have to have this dress, you have to have this car, you have to have this big house, you have to have all of these things. Well, what about having love? Those things fade away. I've worked with very, very wealthy people because of where I was working, Lenox Hill Hospital at the time. And I can tell you, on those people's dying bed, they did not think about how much, most didn't think about how much money they had, okay?
Didn't matter,
They thought about who loved them, who was there for them.
Wow. So it goes back again to that whole business of reevaluating what our values are. And yes, while there is it's a tightrope of balancing the current pandemic and the crises that has resulted from it with, you know, your building, you know, showing love to your children or spending the time or investing the effort. It has to be done. We have to figure out a way, is what you're saying, and make sure that we put the value where it really matters. It's a tall order.
It requires loving our children. And love, a part of love, it says it suffers long. There's pain. See, I feel like doing this, I want to do that. I can't think about the fact that when I was little, my mama didn't do that for me. I know what my children need, and that's what I do.
That's what you need to do.
And again, it's not just with the children, because the husbands, if you happen to have one of those, they suffer too.
Husband suffers too, right? Yeah, like I said, it's a tall order. But you said something is that we have to choose to believe in ourselves in order to overcome the lack of confidence. We have to take charge and make the changes as needed. But that, as I've been saying since we started this series, takes a certain level of self-awareness. Because the truth is, you may be struggling with your confidence and don't even know that it started when you were young, when your mother didn't have time for you. You probably can't even connect the dots. So that's why, again, you're saying that it's important for people to really invest in personal development, to understand. I know for myself, investing in personal development, coaching, therapy is all part of my deliberate, determined action to make sure that I'm continuously growing. And as part of the eSpeaks platform, that's what we are very serious about. And Dr. Brown offers her services during this period of the pandemic to help us to navigate the emotional effects or breakdown that may have happened as a result, or that is happening as a result of the crises that we are overcoming. And so if building your confidence is something, audience, that you want to start to really investigate, if you're wondering why is it that I can't seem to reach a certain goal or whatever it is, the questions in your mind that nags you, it may be a good opportunity for you to consider taking advantage of those services. Now, Dr. Brown, can you tell me what other techniques people can use to overcome the lack of confidence, besides the one that we've talked about before, which is to believe in ourselves, to take charge, and to make the needed changes? Are there anything else that people can do? Any other practicals that you can think of?
Yes, we can be nice to ourselves. We can say nice things to ourselves. Sometimes we say the most horrible things about ourselves, things that we would not even say to other people.
Wow.
And that happens to the extent that you have been mistreated. You know, up to this point, we're only talking about a goodwill parents who are trying their hardest to do things for themselves and for their children. But we know there are a lot of people who don't have goodwill. And so those people say all sorts of horrible things to their children. They curse at their children. They call them names, you know?
Man.
So adding to all of that is when you go to school, you know, the school isn't there to, for the most part, most schools aren't there to build up the child. It's there to mold the child to fit whatever society wants. And so if that child isn't a good fit for whatever that school wants, they get messages that they're not okay. And let's not even get into history. When we start talking about history and we start talking about African American people, well, good grief. At one point in our history, we were considered 3/5 of a person.
Wow.
Wonder why there will be a question about, are we okay? And then many times when we talk about African American history, many of the teachers want to start with slavery as if that's where our history began. No, our history didn't begin with slavery. Our history began in Africa. And one of the longest running society was Egypt, which was African. Even in TV, they try to make that look like it was white folks. You know, Elizabeth Taylor helped with that, you know? No, those were Black people. And that society lasted 2,000 consecutive years based on the history that I've read. And we have been given and given, and yet we are told in many ways, you are not okay. And let's not start with going into slavery where we had the house nigger and the field nigger, the light skin and the dark skin, the one with straight hair and the one with his hair is not straight. Oh, there is a whole bunch of things. Let's not just blame that on mom and pop. But mom and pop have a role, but many times they can't use that role. Yes, you know what? We are here and we are closed in. Use that time to talk to your children. Educate yourself. Talk to your children. Tell them that they are somebody.
Well, you sound lit, Dr. Brown.
Well,
this is personal. I get it.
Passionate. I remember,
yes.
Growing up, I grew up in a dysfunctional home. And, talk about personal development and what you tell yourself.
Right.
I didn't have models, with the exception of a few good teachers. And they really did help me, But at some point in time, I looked around and I saw that, hey, I'm lacking something. What's going on? And so I started reading to try to find out, well, what's going on here? What can I do to improve myself? And somewhere along the line, I think it was WWRL on the radio. A slogan used to come on all the time. I am somebody.
I am somebody. Say that, audience. I am somebody. I love that. That
stayed with me. Hearing that, over and over, in spite of what was going on. I am somebody. And so with that and a few kind people, I decided that I was the one that had the right to determine who I was, where I was going to go, what I was going to do. I wasn't going to give that to anybody else, and certainly not to people who didn't like me. Why would I want to do that?
Exactly. So, absolutely.
About yourself, well, as you said,
you're saying that, I'm sorry. So you're saying that in order to, some of the other things we can do to improve or to get the self-confidence that we may have been denied or that we didn't experience, we can talk to ourselves better, use better language. The languaging makes a huge difference. What I say to myself when nobody's around. Actually, I read this book once called What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. Very good book. And you said also we need to invest in our personal development. As you know, here again on eSpeaks, we are very much about coaching and helping you to unleash the brilliance that is within you. You talk about reading books. I just mentioned one of the books that I've read, What to Say When You Talk to Yourself. You also mentioned listening to TED Talks. Very impacting. I've listened to a couple of those. It was also pretty good. I can't hear you.
They can read your book.
That's true. You can read my book. Thank you for the plug, Dr. Brown. My book is called Peace Beyond the Splinter. Reclaim your promise of peace and profits from anxiety's grip through prayer. That is my personal journey from going from feeling like I could not accomplish anything to navigating anxiety and becoming a business owner, getting married, having children, and continuing to grow. So certainly pick it up. It's available on Amazon. So read books, listen to TED Talks, and as we said before, invest. That's a very critical part of this statement. Invest in coaching. People think that when they're getting this kind of help, they're spending money that they don't have. But if we see it as an investment in your personal development, you'll be able to recognize the return on your investment if you think that you're worth it. That's the thing that we're worth it. And you also say, give up the words, I can't. I'm still working on that one because sometimes I still say I can't. And change it to yes, I can. Wow. How has it helped you, to be able to do that? How has it been manifested in your own life, being able to give up the words I can't to I can?
Well, I think the biggest way that it happened in my life is when I was in trouble and I called on God. I knew clearly that I couldn't do it. Remember I told you about a miserable woman in my school, my advisor, who told me she was going to make it her business to see to it that I never graduate from Columbia, I called on God. I said, you know, I heard about you. I read about you, but I need to know you. I need to know her power, because this woman is absolutely intent on destroying me. And destroy me she would. Education was my key to get out. And she was clearly willing to stop it. Well, I called on God. I left it with him. And
I love that. I heard about you. I read about you, but I know I need to see your power. That's confidence right there.
I just see his power. I need to know him. I need to know him.
You need to know him. Right. Okay. So you read about him, you heard about him, but now you need to know him. That's what you told him. Yes?
Yes. This is what I told myself.
That is powerful. You told yourself.
As he started to reveal himself to me, I started having confidence. Because yes, there were things he did, and I mentioned that, you know, but God opened the doors. You see, she managed to interfere with my ability to finish, but she didn't put me out. A year later, I came back, and when I came back, they put her out. And they put her out because she's an alcoholic, along with everything else, with her little nasty ways. And at that point, I said, okay, God, you're real to me right now. You came through big time. And you know what? I don't care what anybody else says. I don't need to have a conversation. I know God for myself. And anybody that will listen to me, I'll tell you about him.
That sounds like confidence right there, the ultimate confidence. Something else you mentioned, or maybe I should ask you, what is another thing to prevent the interruption with our confidence? What's one more nugget you could give us?
When we care too much about what other people think, when our focus on other people and what are they going to say, and am I going to be okay? Are they going to find out my secret that I'm not okay, that I'm a fraud, and all these crappy things.
Thug thoughts. I call them thug thoughts that just hammer your consciousness. The negative tapes is basically what you're saying.
The reality is, you know what the reality? All those people that you think are focused on you really aren't. They have their own, all those people that we often think are focused on us. They have their own problems. And not only that, they are also worried about how we see them. So just to cut the foolishness, leave them alone.
Leave them alone. So we have to wrap up now. So give us your last few thoughts about how the person listening to this replay can continue to grow in their confidence, or if they are presently feeling very ineffective or just not confident at all, what can they do to grow their confidence? Well, you mentioned a lot of things, but what are if you want to leave the audience with something, what would you leave them with?
The biggest thing is to know that you're not stuck with your thoughts, and your thoughts are probably not true. They were lies that attached themselves to you growing up because of unpleasant experiences.
There were lies attached themselves to us because of unpleasant experiences. Wow.
I call them weeds.
Well, pardon?
I call them weeds.
Weeds in your garden.
Yes.
That's so true. Our lives really are like gardens. We have to constantly be tending to them. Well, Dr. Brown, thank you for this robust conversation. And for everybody who's watching or watching the replay, please take note of the nuggets that she's given us about how to really cultivate our confidence and to get rid of the weeds in the garden of our minds so that we can become the next best version of ourselves. Because the truth is, without confidence, it's really hard to accomplish much. But if we start with our Maker and remember that He's the one who has fearfully and made us wonderfully, then we don't have to be so concerned with what other people think. And it's easier said than done. That's why I want to encourage you again to pick up my book, Peace Beyond the Splinter, Reclaim Your Promise of Peace and Profit from Anxiety's Grip Through Prayer. You can join us in our group on Facebook, Angie Speaks, Stronger Than Splinter. You can also follow Dr. Brown, who again is offering her services free of charge during this period of the pandemic through the Eve Speaks platform only. Is it free? So you must come through the Eve Speaks platform, or you can follow her on Instagram at ask_Dr. Mom. I believe you're also promoting a forgiveness group, which will also help with our confidence. Why don't you tell the audience about that, Dr. Brown?
Yes. We're going to have, I'm having a webinar tomorrow at 6:30. So tomorrow at 6:30, I'm going to talk about the steps for forgiving. The first one talked about what forgiving was all about. And now tomorrow I'll talk about steps that we have to take if we want to forgive people.
And certainly forgiveness does help with building our confidence, because we learn to forgive ourselves, right? And so that we can love and forgive other people. Because there's no love if we can't forgive. So thank you once again, Dr. Brown. And we look forward to another episode of Clarity in Crisis. The links will be in the chat below. And so for everybody else, please have a wonderful night. And remember to bet on you and build your confidence. Invest in building your confidence. Have a better than terrific evening. Bye-bye.